I'm Gavin, and welcome to MLS Fantasy Picks.
What's going on, everyone? Back with another video for the week. So I know last week I said I was going to change it up or shorten things up a bit. I'm just taking some more time. I am changing the format of the videos, at least moving forward from now. I was thinking it kind of makes sense if I create my weekly videos similar to how I approach each fantasy week. And I released a video earlier, I think before the season started, around like my fantasy playbook, how I approach each week. So I'll look to do something similar for my weekly videos around player picks. So this is sort of the breakdown that I was thinking. As always, we'll look through how we did last round and some key fantasy takeaways. And definitely we'll still talk about key considerations, so things like CONCACAF Champions Cup and US Open Cup. So moving forward, instead of just doing like the premium, standard, and budget picks for each position, I'm just going to walk through sort of how I approach each game week. So I'll go through my locks for the week, who is definitely on my team. I'm not scrubbing or any switcheroos or anything like that. And then I'll talk through, clean sheet hunting. Who am I looking at from a goalkeeper and defender standpoint? Potential clean sheets or any of those players that have like those attacking upside from a defending standpoint. And then I'll call it the final third section, which is where we're looking at midfielders and forwards that I like for the week, but may not necessarily be my locks, guys that I'm looking at to fill the rest of my team or do switcheroos with. And then, of course, got to keep that budget in mind. So I've got a section called the clearance rack. So those guys that could be a fun shout if you are, lacking budget at a certain position that are still a good look for the week. And then, of course, finishing up with the armband. So who I'm looking at from a captain standpoint. And then something fun I'm thinking about doing, like a weekly poll on YouTube. So just players that I'm looking at for this week. We'll go through the poll at the end of the video. So yeah, with the weekly poll, just looking to get some thoughts on the fantasy game week and just, get your thoughts on fantasy in general. So getting started, let's take a look at past rounds, see how I did. I ended on a 77. So not the best as I dropped in rank. I think I was in around 301 or so, and I'm down to 324. So looking to up my rank each week, but still not an awful score. I didn't drop too much. Week rank was 1,281. Overall rank sits at 324 now. Total score at 710. My team value increased 4.2 million, so I'm at 141.6 million. So let's take a look at the squad, see how I navigated the round. So getting started with keepers. I had Blake hit. I think I swapped out Kalina here. I had him there initially. I liked that matchup. Seeing Benteke was out, so I had Blake on the front end of the keeper. He hit, so I scrubbed out my starting keeper. When it came to my defenders, I initially had, I think, Westfield and Long, but I saw Orellana was in a pretty attacking spot. I liked the matchup. I don't think they got the clean sheet, but he still got an assist, so I'll take the 6. Unfortunately, Toronto lost their clean sheet, so I ended up losing Long there. So wish I kept Westfield in here, but still, I had Wagner from a defensive standpoint from Philly. So yeah, once Orellana hit, I scrubbed my defender here. I did like Charlotte, and I kept Melanda in. But thinking back, I probably should have put in Freeman, and that would have worked out well for me. But yeah, I'll take the 3, I guess. Looking at my midfield, unfortunately, I put Dreyer in instead of Hani. I forget if I was looking at Hani's, I think I was looking at Hani's performances, and he was pretty hit or miss. And of course, he hit last week, and Dreyer was a bit more consistent. But we might talk about it a bit later. But yeah, I don't see Dreyer as the strong fantasy asset that we had earlier in the season, as San Diego has changed a bit. Chucky Lozano is back from injury, so I'm not looking at him as much. I feel like a lot of us have captained Evander, so unfortunate to have that 4. Just a bit of an off day for him. Sullivan, 6 is okay. You want a bit more. Mihailovic, love the 10. And Gostok, still no goal contributions, but like the 5. I did keep Rossi on the bench, and seeing that 5, it wasn't really good enough, and I knew Messi wasn't playing, so I scrubbed him out. I was taking sort of just a flyer pick with Navarro. Him and Georgie have been looking pretty well with Colorado. Unfortunate to get to 3. And ended up putting Bouanga in for that last spot, so good to see the 17 there. So hopping over to our MLS Fantasy Picks leagues, looking at our Open League. So yeah, good scores all around from the top 5. We still got Verks up at first, Clover Street Ultras, Daniels Dogs, Navabusquende FC and Darta FC moving up in the ranks here. So good to see. Good looks on the top 5 here. Some strong scores, and I think I did see 111 from Cabazon FC. So well done there. I'm 85, so a good amount away from first here, but plenty of season left to keep having those differential picks to keep climbing the ranks. As you can see, a crazy week if you had Hani or Surge could really move you up in the ranks in this crazy game of MLS Fantasy. And then moving over to our head-to-head league, so only one undefeated team, Dankaus FC, 10-0, well done. And then good amount. Looks like we got a 9-1-0. 9-0-1s. So fairly, a lot of us here are 27 points. I'm sitting at 24. So I think 6 away. So still early in the season. Anyone's league to win. So I did this a bit earlier in the season, but I still want to keep talking through some key fantasy takeaways that we found from the last round. So I'm just up here in the schedule tab if you guys want to look at it as well. On the fantasy website, and then you can just go back to week 10 and look at all the different stats from the different games. So I feel like looking at some of the big games that we're focusing on, for FC Cincinnati, they got the 2-1 win against SKC. Of course, it's great to see Denke get his 2 goals, so still someone that we'll want to focus on from a forward standpoint when the matchup looks good. Evander did let us down with only 4 points. I just see that as being an off game. I watched most of that game, and he just didn't look good. Bit of off passes, got the ball taken away from him, things like that. So I'm still strong on Evander if the matchup's right, and I would just call that sort of an off week. Looking at the Union versus DC United, I still feel like the Union are very strong from an offensive standpoint. We did play DC, so good to see the clean sheet there. But Baribo was sort of who we were looking at a lot early on in the year, and we're sort of spreading the wealth in terms of goal scoring. So Danley getting on the score sheet this week and last week. Don't expect that to continue. And then Glesnes as well. Damiani, a nice striker's finish, just bodying that defender and getting the goal. So I would continue to look at Damiani, especially when you look at lineups. See if he's starting or if Baribo's starting. I'm still not a huge fan of Ua. He's very hit or miss in terms of strikers for Philly, but keep looking at those Union attackers from a fantasy standpoint. Orlando as well. I don't know if it's target Atlanta season yet, but they are really looking like they're struggling. Orlando has been strong offensively. Pasalic, when he gets that opportunity for his left foot, he can just rip a shot. Freeman as well. When he gets the opportunities up top, he looks really good. So maybe look at teams when they're playing Atlanta, especially when they're away. As long as they're a strong team, like Orlando's good. So you'd want to look at Freeman, Pasalic. Muriel got the PK, so that was good to see. But even without Ojeda, they're still looking strong. New England, honestly, they are in the forming stage, I would say. Heel got his goal in open play. So it's good to see. Heel is definitely someone you want to look at from a fantasy standpoint. I wouldn't count them out. I know we have that bias that New England is bad, but they're trending in the right direction and had like 3 straight clean sheets in the past 3 games. And that's something to say, especially playing Charlotte away. Looking at San Diego, I'm currently fading Dreyer. I feel like there's just a lot to go around there in terms of who can benefit from a fantasy standpoint. And I'm also confused about RSL. I know a lot in the early part of the season I was fading RSL. Diego Luna is in good form. Even away, he looked really good. So I'll keep an eye on RSL. I don't know if I'm picking Luna yet, but someone who I'm definitely looking at. And then this Nashville beatdown of Chicago 7-2. These games are quite crazy. I saw Chicago subbed out some of their main guys at halftime just because they were down like 5-0. I don't know if this is a one-off. Just, playing Chicago, had a lot of good breaks. Still keeping an eye on Hani and Surge. I know Hani's burned me twice this season. Continue to look at them, especially if they're at home. Colorado, even though it was a 1-1 game, Mihailovic still put up 10. Also that cheeky free kick goal. So someone you can depend upon with that goal contribution and bonus points. So continue looking at Mihailovic. From a fantasy standpoint with Vancouver, it's crazy to see they're still crushing it with CONCACAF going on. Hard to tell who will be benefiting from a fantasy standpoint as the points are going around. So, yeah, not necessarily someone or a team that I'll be looking at. And LAFC, I think it's safe to say that Bouanga is back. He looked very dangerous, and for a very cheap price, someone that you want to look at from a fantasy standpoint. And then when it comes to the Galaxy, still target those teams who are playing in the Galaxy, look at those players. Portland is a lot of fun to watch, the amount of goals they're scoring and how they're doing from an attacking standpoint. But from a fantasy side, it's hard to tell who will be benefiting. Like, I'm sure you could pick Anthony. He's quite goal dependent, so he could easily get you a 2 where Moreno might pop off that game, and it looks like Rodriguez is back up top, so he's also very strong. So it may be a bit to see who is that consistent fantasy player putting up points, as they have a lot of good attacking options. And as always, our key considerations this round. So it is a CONCACAF Champions Cup week. So Vancouver and Miami are playing on Wednesday, so I'm curious to see if Messi is playing or if he's injured. Just in general, keep an eye out on those games. No teams are on bye, and then as we get further into the season, there will be more suspensions due to yellow, red cards, and injuries as well. So just a reminder, be sure to check those posts from MLS to see who is injured and out for the upcoming game week. All right, so moving on to my locks for the week. So yeah, I had a bit of fun with some AI tools generating the different thumbnails for my different sections of the show moving forward. So let me know what you guys think. This is a pretty tame one. But yeah, so my locks for the week, these are players that I won't be scrubbing out, that I'm looking at possibly from a captain standpoint. My favorite guys for the week that are in my team first off. So my locks for the week, honestly, there weren't a lot. Just this week, I don't think it's going to be a very chalky week just because the way matchups look, there's a lot of away players that I like more than home players. So normally those locks are just, strong player, good matchup, easy to pick. But yeah, for this week for me, Wagner is a lock. He's got that attacking upside, of course, and they're playing Montreal. They are away, but yeah, I still like how Philly's been looking recently. And then Espinoza, San Jose is at home, and it's a favorable matchup against Portland. So there's probably going to be goals on both sides, but at home, Espinoza is a great look. And then up top, I do have 2 strikers that I'm definitely picking and not scrubbing this week. So I got Chicho Arango with San Jose. It is hard to tell, will it be him or Joseph? I just think Chicho is the better player currently, and his budget shows. But yeah, definitely a lock for me this week. And then with Bouanga's recent form and his price point and a good matchup at home against Houston, he is a lock for me this week. So as I said, having a bit of fun with these AI generated images. So this is our clean sheet hunting section. So we've got our hunter, keeping that clean sheet in net. So I'll call out the goalkeepers that I like from a keeperoo standpoint, defenders I like from, a clean sheet spot as well, and then some of those defenders as well that have that attacking upside. So moving on to our clean sheet hunting. So when it comes to keeperoos this week, honestly, not a lot of great options, at least for me. From a potential early game, so someone I'd put on the bench, maybe you want to look at that Toronto-New England game. I mean, New England's kept 3 clean sheets in the past 3 games. So maybe you could throw Ivacic on the bench there. I'm not too sure about Toronto, but worth a shout. It's the early game. Columbus, I feel like, has a decent look against Charlotte at home. So you have Schulte there. And then you could also look at Stuver playing Minnesota, who really haven't been clicking too much from an offensive standpoint. When it comes to the late games, I do like Lloris and Lloris from LAFC, and then Fry from Seattle. So you're playing it a bit close with, if we look at the games down here. So if you do go Austin with an 8:30, it's a bit tough to hit these 10:30 matchups as the game may not be finished. But if you look at some of those like Columbus games or the Revolution game, you have good options to have a late keeperoo of Lloris and Fry. Fry probably the cheaper option, but I still feel like both are pretty good options from a keeperoo standpoint. So looking at defenders, Those with attacking upside this week, I like Freeman from Orlando. They are away at Chicago, so I'm not expecting a clean sheet, but if you want to put him on your bench just to see if he gets a goal or an assist or anything, I feel like that's a decent option. But with a better option for a clean sheet and attacking upside, I'd say look at Morera or Farzi from Columbus. A bit expensive, but a good home matchup against Charlotte. And then, of course, Orjano. I honestly haven't been a huge fan of him. He did get the assist last week, which is good to see for that attacking upside. But yeah, Cincinnati's clean sheet numbers haven't looked great this year. But he's $9.8 million. Not crazy expensive. I mean, more on the higher side there, but I feel like he's still worth the look. At least a good late option if you need it, since they're playing Sunday against NYC. And then when it comes to actual clean sheet looks, I do like Seattle, as I said before, LAFC, and Austin. So for your LAFC players, I like Hollingshead, Seattle. There's a cheap option that I'll call out later in the video. And then when it comes to Austin, you have your John Gallagher's, anyone basically at the defensive line. You're looking for a clean sheet. And Gallagher really hasn't stepped up from an offensive standpoint this year. So yeah, I'd say anyone from that Austin back line. All right, and moving on to the final third. So yeah, this one was a bit challenging to get an image generated for this. I just wanted like an attacker shooting on net. But yeah, it took a bit to get there. But this section is all about my midfielders and forwards that I like. Maybe not my locks for the week, guys, that I'll be looking at from a switcheroo standpoint. Just basically, guys, I'm looking to fill the rest of my squad with from a midfielder and forward standpoint. So moving on to the final third. So midfielders and forwards that I like this week, not necessarily locks, so they may be switcheroo targets, but I like their matchups and I like their form. So starting with my midfielders, I do have Carles Heel here. Maybe he's not even a bench play since he has been in such good form and he has those bonus point numbers. The thing is, I do have a lot of away players in my team this week, so I'm trying to shy away from it as much as I can. But I feel like it's a good matchup for Heel against Toronto. And then looking at Hani, yes, he had a crazy game last week. That could be a fluke. I'm not sure, though they are playing Atlanta. This game could end 0-0. I have no idea what's going to happen with this one. So if anything, I'm probably looking at these Atlanta or Nashville players on the bench. And Hani just has burned me every time I picked him this season. So on the fence with him, though he did put up great numbers last week against Chicago. Mihailovic, someone I'm more of a fan of, especially with that matchup against DC. He's been putting up great numbers week in, week out. He's got the goal contribution last week, 3 attacking bonus points, and a good matchup against DC. As I said, a lot of away players this week, so I'm trying to stay away from it as much as I can, which is why moving on to Almiron with Atlanta. He has been putting up 4s and 5s a lot of the season, so he's that one goal contribution away from a really good score of like a 10 or so. But yeah, it's just tough. Atlanta has been struggling. I think Latte Loss should be back, so maybe you'll have someone to work off of up top. But yeah, still on the fence about Almiron this week. So moving on to forwards that I like. Kuipers, as I said, I'm looking for those home players, so I do like Kuipers with a home matchup against Orlando. He got the goal last week, even though they got beat pretty bad by Nashville. Yeah, pretty goal dependent, but I feel like this is a good matchup at home against Orlando. They can rebound from a tough loss last week. And then Chucky Lozano, he is looking to be the guy for San Diego, at least from a fantasy standpoint. He stepped up after coming back from injury. He's on PKs, which is good to know. He's putting up bonus points for key passes, and he's currently $9.8 million. And at home against Dallas, who let in a good amount of goals against Miami last week. So a good, I think, late option for you. Let's see. 9.15, so kind of late. Yeah, decent look this week with Lozano. And then I guess you could also call out Surge. He put up a crazy 4 goals last week. He's on PKs, at least as we know of. I mean, if he's putting him in, I don't think Hani's going to try and step in and take that away from him. So I think Surge is on PKs against a struggling Atlanta squad. So again, a bench look at best. And then moving on to the clearance rack. So these are some players that I like this week due to their matchups and their price points. So maybe you need or you're low on budget and you need to fill in a defender spot, I'll recommend some defenders, midfielders, and forwards that won't break your bank but are still a good look from a fantasy standpoint this week. And welcome to the clearance rack. So in this section, got to keep that budget focused as I did in my old videos. Just looking at players. If you have one spot left and not a lot of budget, you need someone to look at for the week. I feel like these players are decent looks for your defense, midfield, and forward. So for defense, I think this is Kim Keehee. So he got 3 points last week, but I still like that clean sheet shout against St. Louis, and he's only 6 mil. So I like that Seattle matchup, at least for clean sheet chances this week. Good late option to fall back on if you need some room. And then I've got Manu Garcia, 0.34 ownership. Not someone that everyone's really looking at. But the reason why I'm calling him out is because he's a late game, and they're at home against the Galaxy, who are teams that, we want to play teams that are playing against the Galaxy. Garcia, he's got those bonus points. I'm expecting goals in this game, especially with SKC's recent form. I like him as a good fallback option. At only 8.5, he frees up some budget for you in other places. Pasalic really stepped up with Ojeda being out. We'll have to see if Ojeda is starting against Chicago. He is an away player, so maybe not the best look, but still really stepped up with those goals and assists and bonus points last week. And then moving on to forward, I've got Damiani here. He got the goal last week, some bonus points. Love to see that. So if he's starting, good option, 6.8 against Montreal. But a better look definitely would be Bouanga at home against Houston. So it's crazy to say that he's budget, but he really hasn't done much early on in the season, and he's coming into form, which we love to see. So at $9 million, I feel like he's a great option at forward with a good matchup. And then if you can't tell by this AI image generator, we've got a captain with the armband, wearing a cap, captaining a boat. It's all about the captain. And for our captain picks are the armband section. So it's definitely a lot more fun now that Messi hasn't been starting, and there's a bit more variety in terms of midfielder picks. And I'm one, as I've said before, to usually go for midfielders, and it's kind of burned me sometimes, especially with the Evander pick last week. So maybe I do look at Bouanga this week for a captain pick. But Espinoza, I feel it's a great matchup against Portland, and he's got that good floor. Hopefully he keeps that up. And then Kuiper's pretty boomer bust, but again, a great matchup. This team sure let in some goals, and hopefully Chicago wants to rebound and score plenty of goals this week at home. And Kuiper's, I would see, would most likely be involved. And then finishing things up, as I said, just looking to do a quick poll, see what you guys are thinking from a fantasy standpoint. This week, I'm looking at a couple players, similar price point, similar matchups. Just who do you think would get the most points this week? Let's see. So finishing things off, thought it'd be fun with a weekly poll. So for these two players, they are similar price point, same exact price point. They are both away and both strong midfield options. So I've got Djordje Mihailovic, Colorado, away against DC United. And then I've got Evander with Cincinnati away at NYC. So I posted the poll on my YouTube. I've got the link in the description below. So feel free to head over and cast your vote. So at least for me this week, hopping over, who scores more points in MLS Fantasy Round 11? Evander let us down last week. I feel like Djordje is a bit more consistent, so at least my vote goes for Mihailovic for this week. So I'll look to cast my vote here shortly. I'll look to review the poll during next week's video, and we'll see who ended up picking the right play here with Mihailovic or Evander. All right, so that finishes up the video for me this week. Hope you guys enjoyed the new format. I had fun with it. Let me know in the comments below if anything else you think would be helpful. And as always, good luck.